This came up last week on Chris Hayes' program. Shawn Fain was on there. You know, we had Jane McAlevey on talking about, you know, some of the things that she was impressed by with what the UAW has done. And a lot of it has to do with the amount of democracy, small d democracy, that he has brought to the union, getting people much more involved and with the sense that they have a lot more sort of like power within the union in and of itself. And when people feel that level of power, it empowers the union more broadly. I mean, it's almost built into the whole concept of union. But here is Shawn Fain on Chris Hayes' program Wednesday of last week.
You talked about your contract, I think, is up May Day 2020. Yeah. What year? 2028? No, it's a 4-year deal?
Yeah. It's be 4.5 years, so yes.
And the idea that other unions negotiate similar contracts with similar dates, so a sort of additive power to the threat of strike. What do you think the lesson has been from this year, not just with the United Auto Workers, but we've seen it with the Writers Guild.
Pause it for 1 sec. I also want to remind you there's something else that's going to be happening about 5 months after May 2024.
The election.
2028, rather.
The election.
The election. So there's a lot. I mean, that is a very, very loaded time.
The most political attention, like that's when it starts to ramp up, is that exact period.
Which is
exactly
why it's.
And I would also say probably 30 days, 45 days before the conventions. So just to keep that in mind too. It's not being talked about, but that is I think a really important point to keep in mind, because it's going to force the next nominee of the Democratic Party to make some decisions about where they're going to land. And I think, Biden coming out and supporting that strike has set a precedent for where it makes sense for a Democratic president or presidential candidate to land. Go ahead.
Power to the threat of strike. What do you think the lesson has been from this year, not just for the United Auto Workers, but we've seen it with the Writers Guild, we've seen it with SAG-AFTRA, we've seen it with flight attendants, we've seen it across the labor movement and across working people in this country, the most amount of strike activity we've seen in a generation.
Look, working class people are fed up, union or not, and I think, COVID taught us a valuable lesson. People reflected on what's important in life. And what's important in life is not working 7 days a week, 12 and 16 hours a day, or working multiple jobs, scraping to get by, living paycheck to paycheck. People want a life, and that's not a life. And so I think that's what people are seeing now is the pathway to having a better life is by organizing and joining a union. And so I was very ecstatic we got May Day as an expiration date. And I look forward to not just unions in this nation, but in this world to align our dates. And that's one thing we learned in that process is we have the power. When we withhold our labor, no matter where people work, nothing moves. The billionaire class, the corporate class can build all the factories or businesses they want, but if there aren't people there to do the work, nothing's going to move. And so we have to harness that power, come together and organize and work together and stand together, and we'll take our lives back.
I just saw and maybe this was, this is a story from Fox Business. And Bill Gates saying that AI could lead to a 3-day work week. And aside from that being...
Water to make water taste better.
Oh,
your speaker's still
sorry about that. I just sent that headline. If you compare, and what he says
in
in justifying
the sky when we die too.
Well, I mean, put aside the fallacy of that. I mean, I've talked about that like a futurist article I found in my steamer trunk, 30 years ago from when he was talking to like a Rotary Club in Florida in the 1950s saying, by the end of the century, we're going to have to worry about what we're going to do with all the extra time we have because we're going to be doing a 4-day work week. But Bill Gates saying that AI could lead to a 3-day work week, he says, like, the whole point of life is not just a job. Compare Bill Gates' perspective on that with Shawn Fain's.
Yep.
Because they both have the same idea. It shouldn't just be about work all the time. And Gates' perspective on this is, we're going to create, is using that idea as a to create hyper efficiency. And every time we have increased productivity, who benefits from that increase in productivity in our system?
Capitalists.
It is the capitalists.
Yeah.
That's when we talk about what the minimum wage should be relative, not to inflation, but to productivity. It should be 3-4 times what it is now. So as productivity increases, as each worker putting in the time makes more, essentially, profit, who gets to share in that profit? Workers, not as much. So Shawn Fain and Bill Gates both have the same perspective that life shouldn't be just about being on a treadmill. But Gates is using that as a way to drive productivity, which is ultimately going to benefit the capitalists. And we have never seen, rarely, that increase in productivity, that increase in efficiency actually go to benefit the worker. Fain starting from the point that Bill Gates pretends is relevant, which is your whole life shouldn't be about work.
It's very easy for him to say when he doesn't have to worry about any basic necessities. And wage workers would be the ones that bear the brunt of this, not like, if they're working on an hourly wage and it's a 3-day work week, you think that
no, but it will never be a 3-day work week.
I know, but even in theory,
all of these technological advances, always go towards not cutting down the amount of work that people have to do, but increasing their productivity in the same, if not more, work that they're doing, and the people who benefit from that added productivity ends up being the capitalists. And so Bill Gates deploys life shouldn't just be about work as a way of basically saying, we're going to add these technologies that are going to supposedly make it less about work, but there's no move. There's not going to be a 3-day work week.
We can historicize
There's not going to be a 4.
this. Like, how did we get the 5-day work week? It wasn't because capitalists were like, "Oh, damn! Look at all this
new
mechanical
machinery
technology. We can let you guys take 2 days off." It was workers forced them to by organizing.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And so it really doesn't matter. The technological advances don't matter. At the end of the day, if you really believe that life is more than just work, there's only one way that is going to be realized, and that is by the people doing the work saying, this is as much as we're going to do. And the way that we're going to do this much work is that you're going to pay us so that we can afford to not have to work for X number of days. Not because of AI or any technology. That is fool's gold. The facts, the emails, like I lived through this. People aren't working less. They work more.
Right. Well, like even, Bill Gates, Microsoft is toying with the idea of making Windows a subscription service because they just want to skim off of like actually the work that you do, sending emails and putting stuff in your calendars. They want a slice of that. The idea that they actually care about any sort of thing but getting more money is ridiculous. And Microsoft is invested in AI. Like ChatGPT Bing is all over ChatGPT. That's what this is about. This is promotion.
They're the biggest investor in that OpenAI company that is supposedly like the board is run by as a non-profit, but in reality, it's people like this they're calling the shots.
Yeah.
And that philosophy was being piped to Earth.
There you go. It's just interesting to see, both Fain and Bill Gates in the same week, more or less make the same sort of like premise, but one is in service of actually getting to that premise, and the other is in service of actually just putting more money in the pockets of people like Bill Gates.